We all tend to think of the media as a watchdog, right? A crucial check on power. But what if, most of the time, it's actually more of a lapdog, one that serves the powerful? That's the core of a pretty challenging theory we're going to dive into today, one that makes you question the entire purpose of mass media.
And look, this quote from Judge Gerfain really gets to the heart of that ideal, doesn't it? He said this during the famous Pentagon Papers case. This idea of a stubborn, ever-present watchdog, it's a powerful image, something we cherish. And it's protected for one big reason, to make sure a free political system can actually work.
Yeah, it's a really inspiring vision. But is that really what's going on? Is it the complete picture?
All right, so let's start by digging into that traditional ideal, the media as a public watchdog.
So the core idea here, which you'll hear from people like Supreme Court justices, is that the press has this fundamental societal purpose. It's supposed to be the tool that gives us, the public, the information we need to actually have a say in our own government. I mean, simply put, it's seen as the very cornerstone of democracy.
Okay, but now let's flip the script completely and look at a radically different take, a challenging framework known as the propaganda model.
So this model basically turns that whole watchdog idea on its head. It argues that the media's actual purpose isn't to empower you and me, but to drill in and defend the agenda of the powerful, privileged groups that really run the show.
So you can see them right here, side by side. It's a huge difference, right? Does the media empower the public for real, meaningful control, or does it just manufacture our consent for what the elite wants? Now, the theory is quick to point out this isn't about bad journalists, but about the very structure of the media system itself.
So you might be asking, how does this even work? Well, the theory says it's not usually about telling straight-up lies. It's way more subtle. It's about which topics even get selected for coverage in the first place, how the issues are framed, what information gets filtered out, and maybe most importantly, which ideas are kept inside the bounds of acceptable debate and which ideas are just never even heard.
So, to see if this model holds any water, the source material does something really interesting. It doesn't go after the easy targets. Nope, it takes on the very cases that are often held up as proof that the media is independent. It's kind of like a controlled experiment on media history.
And what's the biggest, most famous example of the press holding power accountable? Watergate, of course. It's the legendary story, right? Heroic reporters taking down a corrupt president. It is the gold standard of what we think investigative journalism should be.
But the propaganda model says, hang on, let's look closer at what made Watergate a scandal. The break-in at the DNC? Well, that was a threat to another very powerful group, the Democratic Party. Nixon's enemies list? Again, it targeted other powerful people. But think about what was happening at the exact same time. The FBI was illegally disrupting a legal political party for decades. It was even complicit in the police assassination of a Black Panther leader. But those actions targeted marginalized groups, so crickets from the press. The secret bombing of Cambodia only became a huge scandal when it was revealed that it infringed on Congress's power, not because hundreds of thousands of people were killed. And this quote just nails the conclusion the model draws from all this. The watchdog only barked when the powerful started threatening other powerful people. It wasn't a watchdog for democracy as a whole. It was a guard dog for the privileged. The scandal blew up because one elite group stepped on another's toes.
Here's another really stark example from the same time period. Two absolutely horrific genocides were happening. On one hand, the atrocities of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia got massive media coverage. They were considered worthy victims because talking about their suffering was really useful anti-communist propaganda. But on the other hand, Indonesia's invasion of East Timor, which was just as brutal, was met with almost total silence in the media. And why? Because Indonesia was a U.S. client state, getting American weapons and support. They were unworthy victims because actually reporting on their story would have made some very powerful people back home look very, very bad.
Okay, so this all begs a really big question, right? If this system is real, how does it actually work? It's not like there are daily memos from some shadowy figure telling reporters what to cover. The source argues it's all about control without any obvious coercion. Exactly. If it isn't some smoky backroom conspiracy, how on earth does this widespread conformity happen? Well, according to the model, the answer is baked right into the structure of the system itself.
So let's break it down. First off, you have to remember that major media outlets are massive corporations, and their main product isn't really the news, it's you, the audience. And they sell that product to other businesses, their advertisers. This creates a huge market pressure to create content that's friendly to corporate interests. Second, the people who don't quite fit this mold, who don't share the system's basic assumptions, well, they get filtered out. They're labeled as irresponsible or biased, and their careers stall. This leads to step 3. The journalists who succeed have so internalized these values that they don't even feel like they're being censored. They honestly believe they're being free and objective because it's just how they see the world. And finally, there's a heavy reliance on official sources. Sticking to what government and corporate spokespeople say is just the easiest, safest path to getting stories and keeping your access.
And the impact of all this? Well, the media analyst Ben Begdikian really sums it up here. This isn't just about protecting powerful people. This kind of institutional bias fundamentally robs all of us, the public, of the chance to truly understand the world we live in.
All right, so after all that, you might be thinking, wow, that sounds pretty bleak. Is the system just unbeatable? Well, not according to this theory. In fact, it actually points to some really significant counter forces and a real potential for change.
A key example of the system's limits is something called the Vietnam Syndrome. Despite decades of effort from politicians and the media, a deep public skepticism about getting into foreign wars has really stuck around. It just goes to show that public opinion can still be a powerful check, even when the elite all seem to agree.
And beyond that, there's a whole growing ecosystem of alternative media out there. You've got the rise of cable and satellite, public access TV, nonprofit radio stations, public television. These all represent real opportunities to break through that filtering system and hear different voices.
And hey, this isn't just some abstract idea. Look at the numbers. In the US alone, there are about 3,000 public access channels. Together, they produce something like 20,000 hours of local programming every single week. The basic framework for a more democratic media is already there.
So, at the end of the day, the argument really comes full circle. A truly free and independent press doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It requires an active, organized public that demands it and then goes out and builds it from the ground up through activism and community networking.
So look, here's the main takeaway. It doesn't matter if you buy into this propaganda model 100% or not. Just understanding these structural forces, the market pressures, the reliance on official sources, the filtering mechanisms, that understanding is the absolute essential first step to becoming a more critical consumer of news, and maybe even working toward a media that serves all of us a little better.
So, as you go about your day, scrolling through news feeds and watching reports, it leaves us with one big question to chew on. In today's chaotic media world, who is the watchdog really watching? Thanks for joining this explainer.